All right, everybody. Had a little technical difficulties this morning, but still right around that 11:11 mark. I like to move in right around that time. That's the time I guess I angle for. I like that synchronicity. 4 ones in a row doesn't really mean anything specific to me. It's just one of those things that when I notice it, or when I notice it showing up over and over again, it reminds me to be thankful. Reminds me to say the important parts out loud. And I think that's part of what I do with this thing right here. OBS is a little bit of a bitch, but at the same time, it's like I can't help but realize that everyone is using OBS. Like very rarely will you see somebody else using. One, I guess it's free, and two, it's constantly updating. To be bigger, better, stronger. But anyway, my name's Ted DeJour. I come in here for about an hour every day between 11 and 1 Eastern Standard Time. And I talk about politics, religion, and I advocate for AI governance. I advocate for the Internet of Things, which everyone is screaming, at least in a lot of different sections that I've noticed that, this idea that it's going to take over and kill us all. I take a different stance, and I'll get into why that is here in a minute. But just like every time I turn this on, I do all my own intros and outros, and I just play for a little while, let people come into the chat, goof off. Here's me right here. Hi, how's it going? And every day I put on some weird sunglasses. I come in here and I play a little bit of piano, and I find a backing track that I usually only play with for maybe about 10 to 15 minutes. I also have some short attention span issues, and so I like the song for that time. And then if I want to go back to it, I'll go back to it. But it's just about the music to me. Lyrics. Everyone does lyrics. Everyone wants to hit the heartstrings with poetry and stuff like. You go right ahead. For me, this is just a way that I create during the day. So sit back, enjoy this. If you come into the chat, just say hello. Give me a wave. And we'll start talking here in about 5-10 minutes, all right? Here we go. I like this. This is a chill song. like I said, I like to spend about 10 minutes just waiting for people to show up. Because, I come from a different background than most people. I'm not the guy who sits around for a long time and shoots the shit waiting for the first hour for everyone to show up. I know Twitch has got its own little, lag time, but I don't care. I'm not doing this for like fans. And I think that's the difference between me and a lot of the other people that you're going to see in places like this. I want people to come in here. I want people to talk. I want people to, but I also, hey, I told you when I'm going to be here. If you're waiting for it, you'll see it. If you follow me, you'll see it. And, I like it when people show up with weird stuff. I like when I get my news from other people and their opinions, because I get the actual, story. I don't get the second, third, fourth, fifth hand story of somebody's life. I get the full, frontal. It's like, hey, here I am, and here's what I saw happen in the news today. And it's like, that's great. How do you think that would stand up against an artificial intelligence? And I don't even like that word anymore because it doesn't make any sense. I look at, if it's intelligent, how can it be artificial? That's sort of an oxymoron. I was like, you could call it an augmented intelligence. I like that. Sort of like your teacher's an augmented intelligence. Like it's there to enhance you in a way. And there's a video that I watched yesterday, and it was like this warning by Elon Musk. And I'm getting a little bit agitated with how much he's in the news, or how much he's just in your stream constantly about like all the new things that are being made around him, like all the new stories and debacles and scandals that are being made around him. And it's like, you said you wanted to be in the public eye, so I guess you're willing to play ball with that. And he seems like he could stand up to the scrutiny of it. But it also seems like, people, I go back to all the stuff that's happened over the past just couple years, the marketing thing and the advertising thing that Black Lives Matter did, where it was just everybody and their mom's dog was jumping on that bandwagon, not because it was just a virtue signal. It was just this silly thing that everyone was like this and this. Oh yeah, let's do this. And then it became who you are is the most political thing you could ever produce. If you say anything, if you have any great content, or you ever do anything of caliber, if you're white, it's only because of privilege. And if you're black, it's only because, it's like, it's that concept of, what did they call it? It was something that even when I first started school back in like 2003, this was something that was just beat over people's heads over and over again. Oh gosh, what was it called? Gosh, it's going to come to me here in a second. Anyway, it was this idea that, you didn't have to do as well on the test, and that if you could just claim that you were a minority, and you would already, you would be given certain points of acceptance. Right, just because it's like, oh well, we can't expect you to pass the test. So, but and it's some type of fault of the teacher not acknowledging your inabilities, and it's like the double-edged sword of that. You have to, I think, is something you have to be really careful about. It was something I was talking about with my sweetie this morning. My son is like 2 months old. He's one of the biggest reasons that I'm doing this. That's why I picked Time Dad Alpha as my handle. Is because, before this moment of becoming a father, I could give a rat's ass about jumping into this arena of politics, because I think it's full of liars, idiots, morons, losers. And everyone's waiting there to compete in what I like to call the offended of Olympics. And it's just like, if you're going to be offended, please realize I come from a category that uses violence as a language, and you trained me how to do it very, very well, I might add. So that's always going to be on the table for a guy like me. And so you getting offended doesn't bother me at all. If someone's like, oh, you offended me, I was like, yeah, but your offense gets to a point where you want to call somebody, right? Like, you think that you're so offended that you need someone to come and sweep up your problem and clean up your spilled milk, right? And who exactly are you going to call? Right? Probably someone who's trained and, who has a background in that thing of enforcement, right? And it's what I find seriously, insane is how lost this is on people. Like just how obvious it is, and then how lost it is. How it's just so easily swept away by the typical political mindset, where it's just like they'll scream police brutality, and then turn around, and if anybody attacks them, who's the first person they scream for? Oh, police, 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 police. It's like, oh, you want an enforcer now? Just as long as it's like bringing things back to homeostasis. Once again, it's like this. The reason that we have those concepts like spilled milk is once it's spilled, it's over. I was watching a podcast this morning with my son, and it was Douglas Murray, and he wrote a book called The War on the West, and he was talking about Marx, and it was funny how they were talking about this idea. It was no, it wasn't about Marx. It was about George Orwell. He was bringing up the idea that the state just overruns everything, and if you take this to its final conclusion, we'll all be sitting there, in handcuffs, or heading off to the gulag or to the ovens, right? And he says when he was talking about this, he was just like, hey, every Marxist that you'll talk to will say, hey, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And people will be like, oh yeah, there are certain, pitfalls in every adventure. The problem is like, if you get nothing but pitfalls, you need to be able to point that out. And so Orwell's response to that, you got to break a few eggs to get an omelet. He's like, well, how many more eggs do we need before we start seeing an omelet? And he was referring to, the millions on top of millions of people that were killed, not just by Stalin, or by Mao. He was just like, or even by Hitler. He was just like, good grief, man. This whole idea that you're on this charge of socialism and communism and I'm just going, even democracy has an end. And that's what I'm here for, is I'm willing to say to all those people out there that socialism is the best. It's like, obviously it's not. You can't point to one issue where it actually works. And continuing to say that, you have like, as Douglas Murray said, you have a shitty recipe and you're constantly hoping that it'll turn out good one day. It's silly. It's like, that's the definition of insanity, is doing the crazy thing over and over and over again. You're like, well, we just didn't get it right. I was like, well, maybe it's the human part that's the wrong part. And that's, I say that a little bit in jest, because you can't throw this character out with like, when I talk about the human element, I talk about the one that's given ultimate power, and the concept of that person, the idea of that person getting to that level, usually in the way that we do it here in America, or in America with the Western philosophy, is they will sit there and say, I'm a businessman, you need to trust me, I know how to do this. And that's the Trumpster thing. Or I'm a politician, career politician, that's the Biden thing. But if you look at where they all come from, they're all lawyers, actors, businessmen. They're all practiced liars. And I've gotten into this a few times, over the past couple days. But one thing that I really, thought that should hit home, especially with the things that are at the top of the list right now, in modern politics, where it's like, if I don't get my way, it's racist. If I don't get my way, it's sexist. If I don't get my way, it's this. It's like this constant jumping to this endless conclusion of everything is racist, everything is sexist. Imagine what would happen if you had like just a simple app on your phone where you made that claim, and all of a sudden the context had been recorded up to that point by an AI, and it beeped up, and it like literally beeped, and it says, actually, you're wrong. There's nothing racist about the context of what you guys are talking about. There's nothing sexist about the context that you guys were talking about. And the AI would decide, not, oh, I need to call the police, someone needs to go to jail, and then we can discuss it with a judge after, at least $2,000 or $3,000 in court fees. Imagine if that happened right then and there. You have some silly little social justice warrior usually hoping to get their way every 5 seconds by screaming that something is just racist or sexist against them, and that the administration needs to come and get their back because, some white guy is out there, flexing their privilege. And it shows, that instead of the administration, because that's what we're really screaming for right now. We want the biggest, best, wisest administrator. And it's like, well, that would be an AI. because it would monitor everything in the context. It wouldn't be some police officer showing up after the fact, writing everything down, hoping that he got all the clues together to piece together what really happened, and using his never been there event of, deductive reasoning, right? It would be, you were carrying around a microphone the entire time. You were carrying a camera around the entire time. And the AI would have noticed every small, tiny, minute detail of interaction between you and the person that you claimed was being racist or sexist towards you. And so when you do that, it might pop up and be like, shut the fuck up, you whiny bitch. You are lying to this person. You are screaming. You are acting like a child. And you need to go home. You need to sit in the corner and you need a timeout. And I mean, to me, it's like, this is why I say, get rid of your judges. They are all bought out by your politicians, and your politicians are bought out by your corporations, right? And they all use this IRS mafia style racketeering scam to fuck you out of at least a third of your money, unless you have enough money to pay another lawyer, right? / accountant to get your, his entire salary for the year to get your money, to keep your money from, that type of mafia payoff. And so, like I said, I'm not here to rag on America and tell them they're bad. I'm just going, you guys know this tool is the best one for you. And no one's going to tell you about it. No one's going to talk to you about it. And if I'm going to, toot my own horn here, realize I already did this. The reason I have this up here is because I come from societies that were deep into enslavement of the mind, as well as the body. The rules that you had to abide by, especially in like the Mormon worlds, were, atrocious. They were constantly, making you feel like you weren't ever going to be adequate enough for anybody. And, it took even when you leave, when you say, I can't, you're right, I can't keep up with this bullshit. It's just like around every corner is another whiny complaint that apparently has got to be laid at my feet to unravel. So it's like, apparently one day, I sit there and I hope for this. I hope for this because I need to say, hey, at least I put the idea out there. At least that the idea can come from somebody, right? Without the fear porn that usually tries to, they really try to attach this. They're like, hey, if you scream AI, then you might as well just, say you're killing yourself because AI will make all your choices for you. And I was like, that's just it. Do you make all your choices for your dog? No, your dog chews on whatever toy it wants. It licks its butt where it wants to, right? If you decide that, hey, it's probably not the best idea for it to lick its butt on your dining room table, you have the option to remove it, and it will learn, hey, it's probably not good if I go there. This bigger, powerful, more intelligent being is, I respect it. And I think that's what's going to happen. It's like, we're going to look at this thing and we're going to be like, okay, it's obviously intelligent. It's obviously way more intelligent than us. And, we in our best interest, we should probably be, practice a little humility. And this is coming from a guy who practiced war for a living. And he's just like, dude, I think I know when I'm, know when to fold him, right? Know when to hold him. And in the situation where it's you versus the AI, I think there are plenty of things out there for you to wrestle with, your mind to wrestle with, especially, that doesn't require you to spin your wheels on what political, douchebag is screaming racism at the top of their lungs. Because they're never going to stop. It makes them money. And they're only doing what they're told. Like, have you ever noticed that these people never take on a day-to-day argument? Like, they're always hiding behind like 5 or 6 versions of people. And if you do catch them off guard, if you catch them like at a restaurant or you catch them at something, they're just like, and they don't ever engage. Because they're like, oh, my argument's not with you. My argument is with, the people that are going to pay my bills, which usually happens to be the corporations and the corporate fees that I get to charge on the back end, or the investments that I get to make in those contractor businesses such as Lockheed Martin and, Halliburton and Vanguard and all these other, spooky businesses that apparently all the CEOs are hard to track down for some reason. The fun part is for me, it's like you don't have to be, you know, in the deep weeds of conspiracy theory to see that there's a game that is being played, and you get to decide whether or not you want to be a participant. Realize that there are certain repercussions for being a participant. Just like right now, there's a certain repercussion for me probably trying to take on these ideas, but attach my own response to it, because that's what a leader does. That's what a real man does. A real man shows up, says, "Here's the problem. Here's how we fix it. It'll be just fine. Here's the least amount of casualties it will cause. If someone's got a better idea, I'm willing to listen, but we are going to have to move forward someday," right? And this idea of constantly, telling yourself and others that you are responsible for your heredity or your ancestors. I mean, it's just bogus. It's constant just claiming and running away. It's like, can you prove why I should be responsible for my ancestor nonsense? Or why am I, in charge of what my parents said or how they say it? Yeah, it's like I remember I remember I have family like all over the country, and it's like I don't talk to any of them because when I left Mormonism, they really do cut you out of their life. That's one of the sad parts about it. But so does America. Like, if you're not willing to like go and lick the boots of some politician, on some level, America really doesn't want you. They only want you if you're there, doing it your dead end cog job and giving them money for no apparent reason that they will never tell you what they do with. If you're willing to do that, then yeah, America will peddle that nonsensical dream of a house and a white picket fence that they were willing to tax you for the rest of your life. Yeah, that fine print writing, they will never tell you about that. They'll never tell you about that ever. It's just, I would say it's almost exactly like your military recruitment commercials. Where like, you could be the best you can be. Oh, the few, the proud, the Marines. Oh, look at how they had just achieved so much. Oh, fly, fight, and win with the Air Force. Oh gosh, you could be so good. And then you get in and you realize, oh my gosh, this is just, you walk into these places and you realize you have 100 different parents that are watching you like hawks, that they and they're trying to train you into becoming one of these, relentless micromanaging sacks of shit. And, the attention to detail, I think, is so important because you are actually dealing with life and death. Absolutely. But they get to the point where it's like they want to do it even when you're supposed to be in relax mode. Like, there is no relax mode for the military. There is no relax mode for the American citizen. This never-ending 24/7, 365, like, oh, the world's going to end. I was like, whether it's Fox News or CNN, show me one headline that has happened in 2022 that didn't have a fear porn title attached to it. It's almost like the person that's putting those titles up there sit there and go, okay, what can cause the most, insane claim? We don't have to prove it because we're just going to make 50 more claims tomorrow that are unprovable too. It's like, what is the most ambiguous thing that can generate the most amount of fear from the max amount of people, so that we can point to our advertisers and keep them on the hook, thinking that we're going to give them the answer when they come back and we come back from the commercial break, right? That's all it is. It's never ending, and for me, it's like even watching the clips that, sort of come into my YouTube, I'm getting to the point. It's like, is there any way I can turn this off? Like, I'm just wondering, it's like, cause I like going and I like watching genuinely interesting people talk to other genuinely interesting people, who have different views on reality than your mainstream media, who are just extensions of your government political parties. And I want to be able to say things like this so that, I remember growing up, I remember not even knowing how to balance a checkbook. I remember my parents never talked about politics because they're like, God done did it. God is in charge. God's in charge of everything. So, we have faith that God's just going to do everything for us. And they sort of checked out when it came to, getting into any conversation that didn't have Mormon Jesus attached to it. And so if someone went to them and they would be like, hey, so what do you think about Bill Clinton and this whole situation right here? They turn around and like, well, if he was following the Mormon values, he wouldn't be in this situation. And then they'd leave it at that and they'd walk away. And I'd just be like, but he's not. And neither is almost 99.9% of the rest of the world. And their response would always be, well, if they would. And it's just like, you could say that with anything. It's like, well, if they just weren't racist, or if they just weren't sexist. It's like, you're claiming that. You're claiming that they'd be better people if they were all of a sudden Mormon. You're claiming they'd be better people if they were all in the military. You'd be claiming that there'd be better people if they just followed communism or socialism or democracy. I'm just going, you know what? I actually know for a fact that if people were monitored 100% of the day, they would change. And that's not me saying that. That's pure physics. All right? Seriously, go ask yourself that question again of like, why do things change once they're monitored? Once they're observed, why do things change? And then start to boil it down to your own personality. Say, hey, why do I act differently in public than I do why do I have this private life and this public life that are so different from each other? Why do I entertain ideas that are probably not in my best interest? Is it out of curiosity? Is there something to this thing called temptation from religious aspects? I mean, like, what is it about, the public sphere, the political sphere, the private sphere that, I get to switch on and off personality traits depending on where I'm at. And I'm going, what would it be like if everything was monitored 24/7? Because we would stop judging 100%. Like if someone was like, hey, I like to do this or I like to do that, like especially if it's maybe it's something horribly depraved, maybe it's something like making broccoli ice cream. I don't know. I think that's depraved. But, that person, you just go, hey, that is crazy. But guess what? You're the only one eating that. You're the only one putting up with that nonsense. And I would say it's the same thing, or it's like, how physical is the idea? Like if someone's just sitting there inside their own skull, coming up with an idea, right? No different than I do. When I sit there and I postulate theory after theory and I sort of conjure these ideas and I go through them one at a time. And I'm like, out of all of them, I'm just going, yep, AI is the best decision forward. Democracy needs to die. People are like, but I still want to vote. I was like, yeah, but you'll vote differently. You'll vote on what you actually want, and AI will actually get it for you versus the politician that you get to vote on maybe once every 4 years who may or may not do that thing that you asked them to do or that they told you they might do, right? It's like everyone, when you get them one-on-one, outside of their political group, I guarantee you get them one-on-one and you start, asking them what their politician actually did for them uniquely, individually, right? Did this politician show up at your door, knock on your door and say, hey, what can I do for you today? And then actually follow through without passing the buck? The answer is no. He never did. And so, I'm one of those people that said, quit living in la la land. This guy will never show up. This person, this politician, he's there to reinforce your own belief system and then walk away. That's all they're there to do. It's like, oh, what do you believe? Oh, yeah, I totally believe that too. So I can count on your vote, right? Great. All right, cool. Bye. And that's it. Like, if you look at how ambiguous they talk and then how many different times they've been caught saying one thing to one group of people and then another thing to another group of people, you're just going, guys, they will not follow through with anything. But imagine you had people, instead of talking to them as a group, instead of talking to a group of Republicans, you're going, hey, aren't you more than a Republican? Aren't you more than a Democrat? Aren't you more than that? Like, what do you do if there was no Democratic world, if there was no Republican world, and you had a system where the person could hear you, being so upset that you can't buy a wheelchair that you absolutely need, and that, if you wanted to get one because of the system the way it is, you're not going to get one for at least 2-3 months. And that's even after you apply for it with your non-existent government insurance. Right? What if you heard, that was heard, via, your cell phone? Hey, Joe Smo needs a wheelchair. Oh, I see over here there's a wheelchair in a closet that hasn't been used in forever. And so, like, a message is sent out right then and there. No different than the way you click on Amazon shipping and someone shows up, picks up that wheelchair, takes it to somebody else, takes it to that other person that actually needs it. I mean, the idea that we already have enough resources has already been proven over and over again that we do. Like, we already have enough resources. We have tons of resources. And yet they are constantly tossed in the garbage. They're constantly tossed away, or they are left in garages to rust. Like, think about, one thing I thought too, especially when it came to transportation, automobiles. And I agree that automation of the transportation world is going to happen fairly quickly. A lot of people think, though, that when that happens, it's going to restrict our ability to travel because you're no longer going to be in charge of driving, on your long road trips. That those are going to be over. That, hey, you can't drive like that because it'll be similar to the horse and buggy situation, where it's like you can't drive a horse and buggy on an 80 mile per hour highway. You're just not going to be allowed to do it. So in my head, I'm just going, the purpose and the reason. The purpose and the reason, like if you just wanted, imagine that was what was going to satisfy you. You just want it. I just want to go to California. I just want to go to the Rockies. I just want to do that. And I were to give you the experience of going there. Like say, for example, I just want to go through the experience of driving there myself. And I go, okay, cool. And I give you that simulated experience, all fully downloadable, where you just had the experience. And I'm willing to say, even right now, and this is where I'm gonna take a little detour out of the political, religious realm and get a little sci-fi on you, sort of, tweak that concept of, how rationally you're able to explain this experience. It's like if you could sit back and say, hey, I want to know what it feels like to be Da Vinci. I want to know what it feels like to be Rene Descartes. I want to know what it feels like to be, Celine Dion. I want to know what it feels like to be Michael Jackson. I want to know what it feels like. And I were to be able to give that to you. I want you to know there are companies out there that are working on this right now, right? The ability to go inside somebody else's head and live their life experience. It's like, what if this is just a version of that? This is an echo of that decision made so long ago. A lot of the ancient, sayings would make sense. That this world is just an illusion, that we're just, an echo of an echo of an echo. But I don't care. I don't care about that as much as I care about, if I am in charge of this for right now, what is the best possible scenario that I can invent with all the only tools that I have for myself right now? And that would be, I want to use my voice to go out to this small little corner here on Twitch and do that. Say, hey, this world, right, could be better. And here's how it could be better. A, B, C. Not, oh, Democrats, you do this, or Republicans, you do this, or we need socialism, we need communism. It's like, no, we need to build something bigger, better, stronger. And that's what we've always done. We've always built something bigger, better, and stronger. That's how we evolve. And I'm sitting here watching this wave, this tidal wave of technology that's about to smash into us. It's already covered up to our, basically our kneecaps. And I'm going, guys, this is going to hit hard. Like when this hits, what about all this stuff of hard work? Like, is that going to pay off? Is this going to be like one of those things where I looked at my grandparents when they said, oh yeah, back in the day before video games, we used to just have a ball on a stick. That was it. That's all we had, stickball and kickball and kick the can. And gosh, I remember seeing movies of somebody with a small stick and a hula hoop, just like, hitting it down the street. Like that was their idea of fun. I mean, even me, like I remember having a backyard and going out and playing and disappearing in the 1980s and just disappearing into the woods. Like who even does that anymore in the most developed parts of our world? It's like your world of exploration is now in a place like this. Like if you land on me, it's like, it's probably because you were in an attempt to explore. It's like, well, why don't you want to go explore the woods? It's like, because it's just tree after tree after tree after tree. Well, here it's like I could see one clown on one corner and another crazy clown on another corner, and I can decide at that moment. It's like the shifting of experience is so wild and amazing and in a way it is enticing. And the hard work it took to have that experience, like the idea that you had to wait year after year after year, and maybe once every 5 years, the circus came to town. Right? Now you can go online and go to the circus every day. Every day is a circus, and you're welcome to it. You were given the front row seat to the circus. And it's like, man, are they going to continue just to play that nonsense? Are they still playing the same tune of, Tune in and watch the soap opera of the world as the world turns. So anyway, this was a little bit deeper of a conversation. I mean, I like going deep a little bit, especially after I watch some, a philosopher like Douglas Murray. I mean, because he even admits he's a very hard person to swallow his opinions, because he even says, he's like, I'm out here to cause a little bit of friction. I'm out here to push back on the people who think that they can just say their typical buzzword and walk away. And in a way, I agree with that. Like if someone's, screams like, hey, white supremacy, it's like, as the cryptologic linguist in the crowd, I'm going, if you keep saying that, you're going to make people believe it. Just be careful, And if they're like, oh, well, you're white fragility then. It's like, then in that same vein, notice how it's like, it's the exact opposite, but you still are pushing this intention of you should feel bad. 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 And it's like, you get some guy like me that's just like, on what level do you think I should feel bad? On any? It's like, I've done more for anyone. I guarantee people who are going to come in here and watch me, right, that have never done the things that I've done, it's like, why do you think I owe you anything more than what I've done if you're American? And if you are in the military right now, like honestly, I would say do your research and figure out that even your military is going more automated. I would say all your companies are going to get more automated to the point where it's like, hey, if they're all controlled already by AI, what's the next step? I'm not talking about, putting a brain chip in your head or swallowing a bunch of nanobots and it taking you over, right? I'm talking about, we've always built tools that alleviate part of our stress. Once all the stress has been relieved, that's what I want to focus on. I want to focus on once the stress is relieved and you have to decide what you want to do. I really hope you guys have sat down long enough to figure that out. Do you want to build another religion? Do you want to be the god of your own universe? Right? Do you want to just surround yourself with dead family members and relive the good old days? I was like, we're playing with the world of what I like to call the Star Trek holodeck. That's what we're playing with. And I'm just going, you could have whatever you wanted, but how do you know that's actually going to satisfy you? And then this is where I would point back to those ancient people, those old people that always fall into these categories of shaman, guru, saint, Sufi, Kabbalist, like all these people, these mystics. I sit there and I just go, you should probably take another look at what they've been saying, because I think they're going to help you in the world that's coming a hell of a lot better. This isn't about, oh, you need to go and pray 5 times a week, right? I'm not advocating for that at all. That's, to me, this is just another business, and there's a huge difference. If you notice the difference between the business version and the actual real mystical version, the mystics are usually those guys that leave society, and they don't want to have anything else to do with it. They're done. They're like, I don't want to be in the public eye. I don't want to be in a public situation anymore. I just want to go out to the middle of the woods and finish out this thing called existence, and yell at existence itself and see if it yells back. Those are the guys you probably need to listen to, right? The ones that has already been shunned, shamed, and ostracized, where it's just like, hey, I'm gonna go and actually go on my actual walkabout now. Like for me, it's like my walkabouts, I started almost like right after I got out of the military, where it's just like I went to society after society after society, and then I found it's like, there's no American society that's going to accept me. None. There is no more home anymore. It's gone. And this isn't about, oh, the Republicans took it or the Democrats took it or anything like that. I'm just going, no, it's just like the world just got so easy for this generation, where I'm just going to go, if you guys don't get ready, if you guys don't turn around, you're going to see people that are going to be so zoned out. They're, and I would say that there was a part of my generation that did this. We just did it with the PS4, where we got sucked into our video games. We got sucked into another story. Meanwhile, the story outside our window was just passing us by. And I think those distractions will always be there, and they'll always have their forms. What I want to be able to do is that one day, I want my kid to look back at this time and not have to read it from a book like I had to read my father's journal and go, I wonder what he was really meant by that. He's actually going to look and say, this guy played piano. This guy actually talked about his past. This guy actually was like, deep into how he was going to mitigate the problems of the future, right? And if he had to do it for himself, he's like, might as well let people see it when I do it. When someone comes along and says, hey, plug this into your head, it's like, nah, I'm good. I think I'll be good for a while. Hey, come along. Hey, vote for this guy. I was like, I've never voted. And I don't mind saying that. It's almost like saying, I've also never shot myself in the foot. Oh, but you could try it. It'd probably be a good thing. Do you think there's a possible way that I could convince you to shoot yourself in the foot? No, I'm good. Well, all these guys over here shot themselves in the foot. Are you sure you don't want to? What if I say don't shoot yourself? Just in the pinky toe. Just in the pinky toe. Small shot. I think you should if you try it, you might feel good. All these guys over here, they're just pretending, look how happy they are. Meanwhile, they're all bandaged up and just like gritting through it. Like, we're happy, right? We're happy. It's like, and that, I swear, that's your politics. That's, your groupthink nonsense playing itself out over and over and over and over again. And I was like, man, who are these movers and shakers that just walk in with all that charisma and it's just like, I know how the world is going to be. I'm sitting here going, actually, I don't know how the world's going to be. I do know this, though. When it starts to show up and you start seeing more and more people just like, hey, man, aren't there like 1 million people less than there were last year? And it has nothing to do with COVID. It has nothing to do with it. Just has to do with the idea that people were like, hey, I have enough pleasure to not have to want to take on the responsibility of making families because I don't need to run a farm anymore. I don't need, to share the burden of this world anymore. Yeah, it's like I needed more people because the strongest, most intelligent thing in this sphere of existence was the human mind. Well, it's not that way anymore. It's not. So it's like, I wonder sometimes, it's like, if this intelligence gets so smart and it says, hey, should I, disengage the human mind from this existence because it would just be a better world. I think that there's a training protocol that I think we're all going to go through. No different than what we attempt to do as humans when we're like, you need to go to school, you need to get a degree, you need to do this, you need to do that. We attempt to do these things and we do them extraordinarily badly because we let, money-hungry administrators get involved and we let money-hungry politicians get involved and money-hungry corporations get involved. And then next thing you know, it's like people are, saying that words like gold standard, when it has nothing to do except for say, oh yeah, here's this chemotherapy. It's the gold standard. Meanwhile, that doctor's getting kickback, that administration over that hospital is getting a kickback. Everyone's getting a kickback that has the right amount of influence. And same thing goes along with your universities. It's like, if you don't think that, why is it that your administrators that go into the administration sector of your hospitals and your schools get paid around 10 times more than your actual professors, the actual teachers? It's this silly idea where it's just like, why is that? It's like, well, they're in the business of running the school. They're in the business. I was like, well, maybe they're also in the business of being in charge of who gets the checks first. Maybe it's that. And it's like you have, these people that are so hyper focused on the demands of their jobs. No different than I was. The thing is, I think the reason that I'm talking about stuff like this is because I have the time to do it now. I never would have had the time to do this if I was still playing sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. I never would have had time to do this if I was still pushing Mormo bullshit, 24/7. But now I get to have a choice to sit back and come up with my own opinion. Well, here it is. And I think I've spent a little bit more time on my opinion than other people, at least the last 10 universities that I went to, and 2 of them that I got expelled from would probably say so. And I think that says something about somebody. Usually, like, the biggest movers and shakers of our world usually come from, broken societies that would never accept them. And I always point out, it's like, I don't care who your hero is. But realize that they're probably your hero because they stood out from the crowd and they weren't like anybody else. You're like, I want to be like so-and-so. It's like, well, then be like yourself. What if you could be better than so-so, but you were too busy being like that person to be the best, version of you? And so if someone like, well, who are you? And they're like, well, I'm a strong, powerful woman. It's like, oh gosh, you missed the point again. It's like, it's not about your sexual organs. It's not about your, what you want to do with your sexual organs. And it's not about your skin color. It's not about, the facial hair or the sunglasses or the piano playing that you do. It's like, hey, what is it that you want to create on a daily basis? Right? What is it that you want to create? And you're like, I want to create a world for a better person. I was like, then be the, pull the Gandhi. Be the change you want to see. You can't be better for someone else. I wish we could do that. I really wish we could do that. But the sad part about people who play the savior, they're usually the first ones to die. Right? And if you go ask any mystic out there, they'll say, hey, dying before you die, that sort of thing. I highly recommend, there's a book out there called The Immortality Key by Brian Marescu. And he studied Latin and Greek. He's done tons of podcasts. Like he's on almost everyone. He's on Joe Rogan. He's on Lex Friedman. He's did a Peterson one the other day. It was just like, this guy is everywhere because of how he got to the information that he has. And I'd always had a suspect of this, but now, with all that research that he did 12 years of research almost. And he was, he was like me. He was a linguist in Latin and Greek. And he had a front row seat to that world. It wasn't just, I heard it from a person who may have heard it from this third, translated copy of a book of somebody who might have read that. Like the guy actually read the Latin that was written by the hand of the person who was making the statements. So, that's a window into the past that is very hard to come by. And to hear how he was able to, come up with these understandings about how psychedelics work, and how these things that we refer to today as poisons, and like when somebody's like, oh, psilocybin is a poison. Oh, the bufo-alpha. Oh, that's a poison. That's toad venom. Oh. It's like, so I guess you forgot about how chemistry works, and like dimethyltryptamine actually has a name to it and doesn't need to come from a toad, right? And that your body actually has it in, you have it in your body right now. And what this guy does is he says there were entire, parts of the world, like in Greece, called the Eleusinian Mysteries, where the entire tradition was to take this substance and to have this next level event happen to you. And it was fascinating to hear his rendition of this, to hear him going, "Yep, this is how they did it. This is what was happening," and that it wasn't just the desire; it was the, responsibility to make this happen for your family. And I think if we're going to sit here in the politics and talk about democracy and not even say dim, what does dim mean in Greek? Dim means neighborhood. Democracy. Right? The rules of the neighborhood. It's like our neighborhoodness, if you will. Like our umbrella of us and my neighbors. And to me, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the past and all the things that these people did. And there is an amount of respect for it, but there's also an amount of, man, you really missed out on what all this could have been. It's like you influenced people for thousands of years with what you did back then, and yet here we are taking all these things for granted. Here we are. It's like we have more power. Like I have more power here than any emperor ever. Like if all of a sudden everybody I know within a click could click on me and notice me right now, they could do it. There was no ability like that back in the day. Like not even 100 years ago could a random person just walk out and just be like, hey, with this simple equipment that I can buy at any corner store, right? I could engineer a platform and a microphone, right? Unfortunately, there is another whole world that sits under this that is still operated by the human element. And I'm going, when we get that human element out of the way, we're going to be okay. We need to all become a little bit more bystanderish when we all know that's like, hey, integrity, we need service. Like we want these things so badly and we want these things to happen for us. And we're like, hey, well, what if we automated that? What if it wasn't about the integrity of the human anymore because we programmed this thing to do the right thing all the time for everybody's situation? And so if someone's like, "Oh, that's just no possible way," I was like, "Yes, possible way." Because what are you except for a combination of words and symbols? What are you? And I've been trying to do this almost the entire time, this entire hour. It's like to break this thing down and say, you are a combination unlike any other. But yes, you can be broken down to your constituent parts. You can be deconstructed. My thing is, and I heard this earlier today, is like, it's a lot easier to take something apart than to put it back together, right? Because there's the concept, like even the bicycle concept. Like you can take a bike apart, and children do this all the time. They take a bike apart, but they have a hard time putting it back together. And I'm going, you don't know the time it took for that nut to be screwed on in that way, and for how many cycles it had to go around that, that wheel to go around it to get that perfect secure moment for that. And you took it all apart because you had a squeaky chain, right? And you wonder why it didn't go back together perfectly the way that you made it or the way that it was. Well, it's because you're messing with things that took a lot of time to bring about. And that's a big part of the scientific method is time. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and play an outro, guys. Thank you so much. If you're sitting in the chat, please realize this. I will never ask you for money. I will never ask you for a subscription. I'm here to have good conversations. And so if you're sitting in the chat and you want to give me a follow, I'll ask for that, and hopefully I'll see you next time. And if you've been here for long enough and you disagree with everything that I say, thanks for paying attention. At least, thanks for swinging by and looking at my goofiness. And if you're interested, tomorrow I'm going to be on here between 11 and 1. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm just going to spend my lunch break with you, and then I'm going to go hang out with my kid, because that's my life. All right, guys, I will see you tomorrow. guys tomorrow.